Welcome to Maelstrom Radio presents Here With Me, a series about the stories people want to share about their journeys with mental illness, trauma, and negative thoughts. We are not professionals, nor are we a substitute for their professional diagnosis or treatments. Please enjoy Here With Me. My name is Peter, aka Flatus. With me today is Steve, aka Wanderer from A Stage Reborn. Hey, how's it going, Steve?
It's going pretty well. Enjoying my Sunday. How are you doing today?
Doing okay. Each day is a better and new day, so.
That's good.
I'm going to go ahead and let you share your story, and we'll start on our discussion.
Sure. So, I know some of my friends, some of my staff members, some of my family know that about halfway through law school, it was actually after I founded A Stage Reborn. I went through a series of challenges. Some of them I don't want to go into detail just because they're a little unfun to talk about. But those challenges ended up compounding into what became a diagnosis of having a anxiety and panic disorder. And now, in my experience with it, I always thought of anxiety and panic disorders as being something, entirely mental, and that, it's all in your head. And, if you just meditate and do deep breathing, these things do help. But, I viewed it from an emotional standpoint until the day I experienced a debilitating panic attack that lasted for over 3 hours. I remember I was on the phone with my fiance, Elisa, and she went off to the grocery store, and I just had this feeling of dread. My heart was pounding. I felt, I don't want to say dizzy, but I thought it was dizziness. I wasn't understanding the physical things that were happening to me. And so the last thing I thought was that it was a panic attack. I thought it was something happening to me physically, to my physical health. And so, I'm on the phone with her. I'm freaking out. I'm telling her she's got to get home. I might have to go to the hospital. I don't know what's going on with me. And then eventually I pass out on the couch, and that was the start of that. And that presented a huge amount of challenges with me. I had to learn, everything changed after that changed in my life. Everything became a challenge. Riding the bus to campus became a challenge. Getting called on in class, law school, they use a Socratic method. They randomly pull class members and say, here's a question about the case that you just read. Now you have to answer it in front of the whole class. You can't pass. You have to answer it. And, I going into law school, I had no worries. I enjoyed my first year. I was good at what I was learning. I was, very motivated. And then suddenly I was hit with this condition that completely turned my world upside down, and things that I was once confident with, I just withdrew into. It made it very challenging to do everyday things. I started struggling with just keeping a meal schedule. I struggled horribly with sleep. I still do struggle with sleep. Sometimes I couldn't even get out of my house. And, there was a few professors, I sat down with, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And, I was just moved to Seattle the year prior, so I was still figuring out healthcare things, and I'm like, I don't know how to tackle this. I have no safety net out here, so please bear with me through this struggle. And ultimately, I ended up, seeing a couple doctors, and they were just like, this is a panic disorder. Like and they said, ultimately, they were like, well, in order to control it, you are going to, this isn't something that the level I was at, they said this wasn't something that you can just meditate and deep breathe away. This is something that you're going to want medication to control at first. So that way you can, because it was to the point where I'd have a panic attack so bad, I couldn't even get to the doctor. So they tackled that first. I really didn't like that. So after I went through a few prescriptions for lorazepam and went off that because, there was a week gap between one of my refills and I had horrible withdrawals. And I'm like, I can't do it this way. And just, now that I've, graduated law school, took the bar exam, I've moved back to Nebraska, and I'm able to sit back and breathe and relax a bit. I've learned ways to, tackle and just in retrospect, I never imagined that something and you see it on social media. You see the way people call and treat it, a panic disorder, it's almost, it's often treated as this emotional thing, but people don't realize the impact it has on you, on those around you, the impact that it has on you physically. I can't tell you how many times I'd go to the doctors, I'd have a panic attack, my blood pressure would spike. There was one time I was brought to the ER because it was 170 over 120 or something, or not 120, it was 170 over something. And they said, that's a little worrisome. We're going to keep you here in the ER. And as soon as my panic attack went away, I was back down to normal. And some of the nurses found it amusing. I didn't find it amusing, but it just shows that, something that people view as entirely mental can have so many impacts on everything from your own body to, stopping your confidence and changing your routine. And it's something that needs a lot of attention brought to it. It's something that people should understand. I've talked with other people in communities that have had similar experiences, and sometimes hard to find people that can relate to you on that level. And that's one of the reasons that, I came to you about this, is because I was really interested in opening up, chatting with you on this topic, maybe giving you some of my experience and advice, maybe hearing from you, your point of view. But it's important to come together for these sort of things, because that's the greatest point of healing, is being able to share those experiences, understand them better, understand yourself better, and heal around that.
I completely agree. You made mention that finding a ways to deal with your attacks. And for me, I was having anxiety because I had, through my years of not dealing with my pain, and the best word I have found for it, and I think it's important that I still use it, that I was very desensitized by what happened to me at a young age, that I just let it take the wheel, like that darkness take the wheel. And it was hard. So when I started having the anxiety or panic attacks at night, I had just pushed another person away again. And it got to a point where, I, like, the small voice inside of me was like, you can't keep doing this. You cannot. And so I went back to therapy, and I sat down and I told my therapist, I was like, I can't keep up with, I'm having anxiety attacks now. And if that initial talk with her, the panic attacks became not as severe. And I think by the second and third talk, they had dissipated completely, because I started actually dealing with the core of what was wrong. It wasn't just, all right, we're talking and there's issues that I'm working through, and that's great. But when I started figuring out the core of my issues and dealing with the core of my issues, that stuff started slipping away. And then now I'm working on a kind of a form of cognitive therapy, where I kind of split my mind and pay attention to what my body's doing, so I can better resonate with myself and other people. But it is very, very strange. It was always happening when I was sleeping, not during times when I was awake. As soon as head hit pillow and I would fall asleep, whatever was in my dreams would rip me. I would be ripped right back out of it. And I was in a fetal position on my bed, hyperventilating, and my heart was I thought I was having a heart attack. And it was wild. I didn't know what to do. I honestly didn't know. That's when I put that message out there.
That feeling is terrifying. And I mean, and it's weird how these things can just start happening, and you're like, okay, well, I know I've had some things that I've been dealing with over my life, but why now? Why does it happen right now? Why didn't it happen at the first moment that led up to here? You know, why did it take this long to develop? And it's confusing.
It is. It is super confusing. It is weird that once, even though my friend was the impetus of me going back, the reason why my butt was on that couch ultimately was my dad. And, it finally, digging that part out made a change in me that was super, like, night and day difference. Because before, and everybody's different. Like, while you were in law school and you were dealing with these things and having these anxiety attacks, I mean, how were you with people? Like, how was your relationships with, like, your fiance and like your staff and everything? Like, were you on edge with them, or was it like did you just apologize consistently and say, I'm sorry, like, I'm going through some stuff, or how'd that work out for you?
Oh, that's a challenging question. I'm happy to answer it. I can tell you, if my fiance, it's a good thing my fiance's upstairs, because if she was down here, she would be more than happy to open up a can of worms of how much she just wants to sometimes suffocate me with a pillow because of a panic attack. She honestly she's been an angel. She has held my hand through dealing with this. And that's an important thing, going back to, outreach. It doesn't need to be a significant other. It can just be other people that are willing to sit down, understand you, and help you. And it just takes one. And I had the best one, and she continues to be. I mean, we started learning before I got on lorazepam and stuff. We started learning ways that we could, help tone down the panic attacks, help bring me back down to earth, so I could, be a little more functional. And, and she would memorize those things. And as soon as, she would pick up on, okay, it looks like, he's working up to the point he doesn't know it, but he might have a panic attack. I'm going to go start the valerian root tea. I'm going to go, I'm going to make sure he puts on, I had this really nice, relaxing playlist of music, just because I'm one of those musically attuned sort of people. That stuff helps me a lot. Same. So we figured, I figured out what songs, because, there's songs that would stress me out, because I just listen to music that way. I don't listen to lyrics. I listen to the actual sound coming out, and that's where I get my enjoyment from. And so I would figure out the things that, the kind of music that made me fall asleep, and I would start putting that stuff on, because we learned that if I watched something sentimental that made me emotional, that for some reason blocked out some of the panic attack stuff. If I was drowsy, that also helped. But like I said, I didn't like lorazepam. So we were like, okay, sleepy time teas, sleepy music, and maybe watching something on Lifetime, that kind of thing, because those seem to, block out from my head, when I needed it. Those seem to, block out the whole panic stuff. But sometimes she would just get annoyed with it, because, she's been through a lot too. She also has, issues with anxiety. And so watching me go through a panic attack, it's almost funny, because, well, it's not really funny, but I would go through a panic attack. And then when I finally calm down and I get that rush of, oh, my panic attack's over, my brain's releasing all the happier chemicals now, I'm feeling better, this is good, I'd look over to her and she'd be super anxious. And I'm like, oh no, I just passed it over to you. And also, dealing with things like, when they were first really, really bad, I had to stop taking public transit, because I couldn't even make 2 buses to get to campus. And so she would grin and bear it and drive me through horrible, horrible Seattle traffic. We're talking Seattle, like, if you're familiar with the area, Mercer Avenue, rush hour, so on and so forth. Like, she would she would take me through there on her own. She would take the time to just drive me because she knew I felt safer, and being in the car with her was a lot less stress on my system than public transit. I was able to wean myself back into taking public transit more and more. So luckily that didn't last too long, but you imagine having to cart somebody around, even more than usual because, especially if they have a panic attack in the car, that's rough. As far as impact on things like working with my staff, I know, I'm pretty transparent about it with a lot of my staff members, just because sometimes, I'll have highs and lows, and, I want them to understand, that I try to be on all the time for them. I try to be a source of motivation, of inspiration. I try to get a lot of work done, but then there's times where I crash, and luckily, I have wonderful staff at A Stage Reborn. They're all very understanding. Nobody gets mad when I'm like, hey, I gotta go, or if I need to reschedule something because I'm not feeling well. But that's part of having a team there, a supportive team, especially everyone on the team with the mission of making the arts more accessible. We really take an understanding of these kind of things. And it also helps that I'm not the only one in the organization that does have challenges like this. So, as far as that goes, that's good and understanding. But then there's also challenges with, for example, I was halfway through law school, and there would be days where I couldn't get out of my apartment. And that's a bit challenging because, there was a point where I did have to email administration because there's attendance requirements and things like when you take your final exams, there's very specific things on that. And I realized, I was like, well, I don't have like a ADA accommodation that I need, but I have a problem that I need to take care of. And I was torn on how to address this. So I know some professors were like, some of the professors I had were so strict on attendance that I was scared that if I had a panic attack during class and had to leave, or if I had a panic attack and I couldn't get to class on time, that it would jeopardize my education. And we're talking 6 figures of debt. And so, one of the things I did is I went to the dean and I just poured my soul to her. Sorry, pausing a second here.
No, it's okay.
It was probably one of the most difficult conversations I had in my time in law school. More difficult than any exam, more difficult than the bar exam that I just took. But sitting down and just explaining all the things that happened that led up to the problem I was encountering. And there were some things we were again, I'm not going to go too into specifics, but we were involved in an accident that had a fatality that left a very severe impression on my mind, and a few other things. And those, having to sit down and open up, and that's probably one of the absolute hardest things. And having somebody, somebody who understands that sort of thing, somebody who's trained like a therapist, somebody who is basically an expert listener on these things, having that helps to open up to, because I broke down in the dean's office, just explaining all the things that compounded to that moment. And I said, I just want, and I had great grades. All my professors loved me. And I was just like, I just don't want this to jeopardize all the hard work I've done. But, what's going to happen? What do I need to know? What do I need to do? And it was funny because I had sent an email explaining all of this beforehand so I could explain, both talk about it when I got to the office, but also give her a prep on what I was going to talk about. And when I walked into her office, she slowly turned her chair towards the door, looked at me and said, "Stephen, I just finished reading your email." And that was it. But it was also a huge relief off my shoulders because they were all very cooperative with me. You read the handbook for the school and for exams and things, and they're like, if, the ADA accommodation, you need to have a notice and things. And I'm like, but that's not me. I mean, I had a problem that was it was a struggle with mental illness, but it wasn't like an official ADA accommodation sort of struggle. I didn't know if there was a line I could fall on. I didn't know if there was an exception or anything. It seemed like a hard line rule, but just sitting down and having an open and honest conversation, being one of the hardest things to do, was probably one of the best things that I did, because it led to me being able to actually, tackle my actual concerns with graduating. I was able to graduate fine and on time, no problems, good grades. And, I learned that day that the administration for the school that I went to was, very caring about their students. And that was a huge, huge relief to me. And I think ultimately that was part of what helped me on the road to bettering myself as I am today.
I wanted to point out that the fact that you said one of the most difficult talks you've ever had. I just went through that recently with my dad, sitting down and confronting him about what he had did to me, like what was ultimately the reason why I was sitting on that couch. And I needed him to admit that own everything he did to me. And it was really, really difficult because I didn't want to make that phone call, but there was that fire in my stomach saying, the only way you're going to get better is if you make that phone call. And my therapist said, like, do it while he's alive. And she didn't expect me to do it. Like, from moment of Wednesday of therapy appointment to that Saturday to have that talk, she had no idea. I never told her I'm going to go do it this weekend. I just did it. And, my relationship with my dad is rough. Like, I barely see him. I barely talk to him. It was always hard to make that connection with him and to sit down. And the only couple of words I got out of my mouth were, "Hey, bro, you really fucked me up," and for him to take the conversation like I completely agree, son, I did, and I own everything. It was cathartic and shocking. I remember, we're on a server together, not a stage report server, a different server, and it's a good place kind of like to vent sometimes for I think all of us. And I remember someone Sarah, who recorded an episode with me yesterday, even he went in there, even said like he talked to his dad and he's processing. And I did. It took me almost 24 hours to like get my mental capacity back up. It's not easy having those talks. It wears on you because you don't want to have them. You everything in your body says don't do that, but in the end, it was the best thing and I could do for myself, because now I'm over that hill, and that was the biggest hill. So I think it's important. Like and anybody that's, like I said, anybody that's listening to this, I think Steve would agree with me that, even though that those talks may be really difficult and you don't want to do them, sometimes it's the best thing for you, because it'll, in the long run, you'll be benefited that more than hurt.
Absolutely, I agree. And the other thing too is, one thing to point out is, is it safe to assume that you knew that you needed to have this talk someday?
Yes. It would, and a lot of it was because, and I don't like dwelling on it so much, and I try not to think about it, but like how I treated people in my past is how I was essentially becoming my father. Like I became my dad, and I became the thing I hated the most, right? Like I essentially said, I'm not, and I've always told myself when I was younger, I'm never going to be that. I'm never going to be that guy. Fuck that guy. I'm never going to be him. And I became him because it was all I ever knew. And when I was so desensitized to it, it kind of just took the wheel, and the person who I was. And I don't, and the thing is, coming on the flip side of this, I'm not too sure who I am. Like I'm trying to figure out that now, which is a great place to be. I'd rather be unsure of who I am, then accept that I'm that other person who wanted to reject people out of his life. So like things like Final Fantasy 14 and these gaming communities, I mean, it was easy for me to be like, I can just disappear for a while and not deal with people. But it's the people that were constantly in my life that got hit the hardest. And they're, you know, and like Shin and I had a long phone call last night because I haven't talked to him in like 2 months, but he told me to focus on myself, and I did. And he said, you know, just, you need time for you. He's like, he's like, you can't worry about me. You need to go handle your stuff. And I said, okay. And I did. I listened to him. He's a very good friend. He's never told me what I wanted to hear. He's always told me what I needed to hear. And as hard as that is for a friend, he's that friend. And so, and he's gotten the brunt of it before too. And he knows that. He's just stubborn. Like he knows I've gotten to like verbal, visceral arguments with him. And it's hard for people to see me in that light because I don't always do it to everyone, but there's other people I have, and it sucks because I don't want to say, I'm not an abusive person, right? I'm not trying to verbally hurt people. Mentally, I just wanted people to leave and for me to be alone, because I accepted that a long time ago. I was just alone, and that I couldn't trust people because I had abandonment issues and stuff like that. Like, I just assumed everyone was going to leave me eventually, even if they weren't, like, even if there was no intention of them leaving. So I had friends that were trying to make me a better FC leader or a better podcaster or even just a better raid lead, whatever the case was, or just to support me. And my brain was like, you need to reject. It was instantly the abort button was hit, and everything. It was like I'm playing chess game with these people, and I was always trying to be 3 moves ahead, and all those moves were essentially how to get them out of my life. And it sucks because through my years, there were some amazing people that truly cared about me, truly knew my past, didn't care, wanted me to wanted to see me succeed, wanted to get me help, and they're gone. And it sucks because, you know, it's hard to go back and be like, hey, I'm a different person now. Could I find them? Sure. But it's hard. And the person that I did that recently to, I mean, they have every right to tell me to fuck off. They have they have every right. And I don't expect them to be like, all is forgiven, friend. Come on back. And that sucks. But I still, and sometimes those discussions happen after the fact that you make those breakthroughs, right? Like, you realize, but it's hard. Sometimes I think it's hard, you know, for you like you said, you had your fiance, and she was you, and you said you were very lucky and very understanding. I think that this person was that for me, but I didn't seek the help fast enough for them to try to help me as much as they were, even if it was just not even listening, but just even like trying to get me to focus on other things. Like, hey, you know, we can play Final Fantasy 14 and focus on that, and we can work on this together, and we can do teamwork stuff. And looking back on it now, I would have preferred that to, I mean, I still needed the therapy, but I think having that in my life would have made all the difference, because I would have had someone who honestly just wanted to support me, even just as a friend that way, and just say, I get it, and I'm just going to hang out with you, and it's going to be fun, and you'll have somebody, and it's going to be cool, and you'll have a friend here. And because Shin was burning out of the game, so I didn't have Shin anymore to lean on in the game. And man, it's you think back and like, shit, that sucks. Shit.
I experienced, it's not the same kind of loss, but it's, you know, one of those things where you lose it and you realize you'll never have that opportunity again. You might have similar opportunities in the future, but they're not that opportunity or that person that you lost. And, going back to law school, one of the big things was networking. I mean, mixers and hackathons and all sorts of things, would go on. And so one of the things that happened is, I had some friends during law school, and, sometimes they would occasionally message me, hey, there's here's an event coming up, or, hey, do you want to go to this mixer? They're going to have drinks and whatnot. Pouring myself a little coffee. Well, Elisa just came downstairs to pour me a cup of coffee. She's, like I said, she is amazing. And a bonus cup. Thank you. Oh goodness.
I like the bonus cup. Is great.
It's almost a shame we don't have video here, because it's this beautiful gigantic blue mug that says "Barely Awake," and it's a little bear with a caption, "Life is good."
I need that. I need that.
I'll send you a picture. I can't remember where she got it, but anyway, going back to losses, I missed out on a huge number of networking events, and some of those were actually when I was working at Wizards of the Coast. And that's an opportunity I may never have in my life again. And, it would be things like, they would have, I think it was Wednesdays, they would have free pizza and just gaming in the open, basically the cafeteria in the bottom floor. And I remember several times, I'd be walking out from the end of my day, and I would feel like, that pre-panic attack feeling. And I'm like, okay, I got to get on the bus. I got to get back to my apartment. I need to attack this before I spiral out into something terrible. I got to make sure I take care of myself here. And I'd be walking by, and the guy outside the cafeteria would be like, hey, do you want to come in for some pizza and gaming? And I'm like, free food, hanging out with people. I'm incredibly social. Like in undergrad, I was everywhere. And so when this panic disorder hit me, it was so disheartening, because I was the guy that went everywhere and did everything. Like I loved going out all the time, never wanted to sleep. And here I am at my dream job at the happiest place in the world. Wizards of the Coast is really one of the happiest places in the world, I swear, at least for me. And I'm like, I can't. And I couldn't, I didn't want to say I have a panic disorder and I just can't do this. And so often whenever I'd get invited to things, I would just be like, oh, I've got some a brief for legal writing I got to really crack down on, or I'm feeling a little iffy, my stomach's not feeling that great, so I was just going to go home and eat a soup or something for dinner and relax. And I just come up with these excuses of the reasonable things, but excuses ultimately for why my panic disorder was not allowing me to have fun. And I started, and what really disappoints me, and I know I can't change it, is how much time that I've lost to, rather than fixing the problem and going, hey, my panic disorder is stopping me from going out and being social and networking like I used to. How can I fix that first? Instead of doing that, I found ways to get back to my safe space. And so while it's good to have things that help you, it's also important to confront them. And sometimes, the big talk that is the biggest hill to get over, sometimes it takes little talks to get up to there. You talk to somebody about your problem, they lead you to somebody else, that leads you to therapy. A therapist lays out a plan for you, and then you get the inspiration and courage to tackle that. And I feel that's what you did here. You made amazing progress in doing the things you did. And we can't turn back on the things that we lost and, over focus on them. The more important thing is to focus on the tomorrow. So when I finally, I got out of Seattle, and ultimately I moved back to Nebraska. One, I weirdly love it here. Two, the biggest thing was the cost of living and the opportunities for me were not that great in Seattle. A lot of it because in my industry, in law, a lot of it is about networking. And that's something that I let my panic disorder take from me. I could have, maybe I could have done more and gotten a really nice, fun job. Maybe I could have ended up working at Wizards of the Coast after I graduated rather than just an externship. I won't know. And I have to accept that and move forward with that lesson. And so, that's the kind of loss that I experienced from it. And now I'm making it a point to, now that I'm out in Nebraska, I'm like, it's a smaller area. There's not as much going on. But I tackled my big problem at first. And I said, I'm not going to let my panic disorder do that again. And even though I don't live in Seattle, I live in a town that needs opportunity. So I got involved in a economic development steering committee for the region. Like it's called the Seeds, and they work on a strategy plan that goes into getting economic development funds from the state. And it's a big deal. And I figured out, I can't tell you how I did it, but I tried, talking to people, learning myself and everything. I figured out how I could solve the problem I had in law school. What was keeping me from networking and going out and doing good things? And I fixed it. And I got myself involved in that steering committee. I went out to friends of mine that I have in this area that have small businesses. And I threw myself to the wolves, and I said, I'm going to find a way. And, I was open and transparent with them. I said, I do have a Saturday meeting to work on your website and some social media strategy. I apologize if I would let them know in advance, especially that day, if I wasn't feeling good. I'm like, hey, it's, I had a panic attack. It's rough. I might have to reschedule. And usually, we work it out, and they're very amicable about it. But I didn't let myself lose opportunity. I just started saying, I need to take opportunity, and I need to figure out the best way to work around my challenges, because that's one of the, and mentally I feel against it. I want to say that's not the right way to do it, but the real way to do it is to, sit down and go, I need to tackle these problems head on, and people will just naturally resist that sort of strategy. But it is the best way, because in participating in that committee and helping out my friends that have small businesses, and doing the things I do for A Stage Reborn, like the A Stage Reborn live webisodes that we have coming up. Getting on stream is hard for me, but I am, gosh darn it, I'm going to get around it. I'm going to figure out how to do this. And the more, the first hill was really hard. The first little hill was, getting myself back out there. That's a hard one. But then the next one's easier, and then the next one's easier. And so now I've got all these wonderful things going on in my life that are well, one, they're keeping me very busy, but they're also, getting me back to the normal me that I was before this whole condition arose. I still have a lot of work to do, but it just goes to show that loss sucks and you can't change it. But going forward, you can make things so much better. And you know what? If, going forward, maybe I lost the opportunities I had in Seattle from those years I was there because of my condition. But it doesn't mean that all my opportunities are lost forever. If I fix things now, I'll have a potential for those opportunities to happen again. Maybe not the same exact opportunities, but good opportunities, better opportunities, just because I didn't call it quits, just because I recognized my losses and said, I got to move forward from this, and I got to do better, and I will do better for myself. And, seeing some of the messages and things that you've sent and things you've talked about, I see you heading in that direction too. And that excites me, not just because, I care about you as a friend, as a fellow content creator, but it's inspirational to see somebody also dealing with struggles, somebody that you can relate to, somebody that you can bounce thoughts off of. Maybe it's not the same experience and we can't relate on that core level, but it's still, it's another person in this army of people that are working to better themselves, their lives, and the lives of those around them, and to not reflect on those losses as big losses, but to learn from them and do the future. And that's what really inspires me.
It inspires me as well. Like now that I took a break for a few weeks from the game. I hadn't talked to my friend in a while. We had a cordial mount run, and I think it was weird for them a little bit more so than me. But I think part of it is that I don't want to. I'm not. There's some parts of me that I think were constant. They were buried, but they were constants, right? I'm still learning who this new person is, but there's still parts of me I feel like I knew were always there. I'm a very strong person. Like I have a presence about me. And this is nothing like I'm tooting my own horn or anything like that. This is stuff like even my therapist said about me, because I had my confidence was shot completely at the beginning of this, even after my dad's talk. So she had a long talk about me about my self-awareness, like how I see myself. And she's like, I need you to stop for a second. You need to take a deep breath at night. You need to hear this because you should hear it. And she's like, when you walk in here, you have a very commanding presence. You're very charming. You have the gift of gab. You're very handsome. And she's like, you're super intelligent. She's like, you are always those things. You will always be those things. And you need to believe in yourself that you are those things. So I made it a point as I was coming back to the game and stuff like that, because I'm an FC leader. I'm a content creator and stuff like that. But I haven't been confident in my content. I haven't been confident as FC leader. I haven't been confident as a friend. But now I am, I had a 4-hour conversation until 7 a.m. in the morning with Shin. I had, I made sure when I was coming back that I made sure that I started meeting the people that had joined, not only while I was gone, but even prior, because I was so antisocial. And it's not right, because my officers who, are amazing, I'm over there, I'm just like, hi, and so now I made it a point to talk to them and introduce myself and get them to know me and, get them to laugh, and part of it is when like one of those people saw my message about the thing. It's actually in one of the groups I ran with, and he's from the one from Balmung, and he's like the other night during the mount farm, he's like, I noticed when you were talking, it seemed very radio, like you have a very radio-esque voice. And I was like, well, I do host a podcast. And he's like, man, it's like a very confident sounding voice. And I said, when we had the discussions prior to my therapy, I was confident sitting in this chair talking into this mic because I was like, I sat in and I pretended I was Flatus, the content creator. And now, since I'm abolishing the name Flatus and just stepping into myself, I'm confident in my skills, not only as a content creator, but as a person. I've been a manager for years. I've been a successful manager. I've gone to the Disney Institute to learn management skills and stuff like that. I've run guilds in WoW since I was young. Yeah. So now, and the most important thing that I'm going to take to these people now is what I've learned. And what I haven't done in a long time is that it's about teamwork. It's about these connections I can make with all these people. Because when I go to a next fan fest, right? Like this last fan fest, and I hate to say it, this last fan fest, I was surrounded by amazing people. Pat was there, Emmy from Musecast, like all these amazing people, my Shin, and I felt very alone. And that should have been my red flag, right? Like my last warning sign that my desensitization finally got to a point where I could be surrounded by people and so desensitized that I can make myself feel alone surrounded by people, and that wasn't good. Because there were so many fun people there, and I internally I had fun. Like I was like, yeah, I got to see the news and everything, and we drank and we went to the parties, but when I left, I was like, I don't think I made the impression I wanted to make on all my friends, and I realized that when one person we both know said, "You're not the person I expected you to be," and that should have been eye-opening. and I was like, I'm sorry. Like I'm not like outside the show, I'm a very quiet person in general, but I don't think it was just the quiet thing. It was, I think they expected like, you're not joking. You're not like, it seemed very odd for them that the person they knew, not even on the show, but off the show. So we've talked to this person off the show before. So it was a little eye-opening. It was eye-opening then. I don't think it didn't raise the flag like it should have. So we are coming up on that mark though. Wander, is there anything you wanted to say before you got out of here, or anything you wanted to add?
I mean, I'm sure there's things on my mind I could bring up and talk, but there's nothing, that I can think of in the moment. Did you have any questions for me about things in general, thoughts, feedbacks, questions about stuff I've mentioned?
I did. I mean, we like, I have one thing, and I think the most important part, like for me, was that you gave really great advice for me on like how to handle the attacks. If somebody is dealing with that but hasn't properly started to seek the help they need, what do you think is the best advice you can give them to maybe help them deal with it until they can go seek out therapy or psychiatry to get medicated?
Oh, I mean, the main / first thing I would mention is kind of your mileage may vary. I think I actually said those specific words in the message I sent. It was like, just FYI, because these kind of things, it's different for everybody. So what works for one person might not work for another, and don't let that scare you or put you off. One of the things, and I've talked to other people before about this sort of thing, and it's often an annoyance for people, is when you tell somebody, you open up and you're like, hey, I'm having it, I'm starting to experience panic attacks, they're creeping me out, I didn't realize how physically involved they can get, what do I do? And they're just like, oh, just do some deep breathing and listen to music, and it'll be like the 10th person that has told you that, and that doesn't work for you. And so don't get frustrated, because that shouldn't be the response that people give. It's something that is going to change for every individual. So with that disclaimer, if none of this helps, I apologize, and don't give up seeking out something that does work for you, because everyone will be different. So like I mentioned before, I figured out that powerful emotions or things like drowsiness that would, and not saying go substance abuse, don't do that. If you take medication, get it through a doctor, get the right one for you that works for you. Your mileage may also vary with that. But, for me, it was things like getting watery-eyed at a Lifetime movie, or listening to music and drinking sleepy time tea, or like the well-rested tea from Trader Joe's, those kind of things that put me in kind of like this, I'm about to fall asleep feeling, taking a nap, trying to get myself to, find what steps to take to get myself into that feeling. That helped take the edge off of many of these panic attacks. It's my go-to now. Whenever I start to feel like I might be winding up to be too anxious, I just put in some well-rested tea. If I need to, I'll go and I'll get some of the drowsy inducing music that I listen to usually at night before going to bed. I get those things in, because those, for some reason, are prioritized in my brain over the fight or flight that panic attacks bring on. Good rest and eating healthy. I know it's overstated a million times, and I'm sorry for giving one of those answers that you always see and hear. But one thing I noticed is, if I fell asleep too late and I woke up too early, that almost always predisposed me to having a panic attack during the day. It's hard especially for a lot of content creators like us, like we're night owls. We like staying up late. We like being online and chatting on Discord and playing our games. But sometimes, you kind of just, journal it. It'll help you figure out your parameters, because I know, like, I'll fall asleep, or I'll be, looking at the clock, and I'll say, okay, if I stay up for another 2 hours, I'm taking this much time off of my sleep. And I know when I have only that much sleep, I usually am anxious the next day. So then I try to make sure, okay, I got to start shutting things down earlier to make sure that I get that, the minimum amount of time that my body is okay functioning on. Because, and this is maybe particular for my panic disorder, but mine is very sensitive to physical sensation and things. Like if another thing I notice is when I start to get sick, like a cold or the flu, I'm more prone to having anxiety or panic episode. And so I'm hyper aware of that. And I learn these things, and I take preventative measures. Again, learning what things are good preventative measures that keep you in a better mental state. Eating healthy was another thing for me. I usually eat healthy most of the time. Sometimes, yeah, I'll have a little bit of a chocolate binge episode every now and then. I'm really bad at convincing everybody in the house that every now and then we need a bag of sweets to enjoy. I'm usually better than that, though. But one thing I noticed is when I was really, really on strict keto, and that's one of the things that super duper worked for me. When I was on strict keto, I had almost no anxiety problems, period. I can't believe how that worked for me. I still don't really believe it, but it worked for me because I was tracking things and I was eating, I was watching my intake and my macros, and I was getting my nutrients, and the carbs ended up being one of the problems for me. And I learned that sugar and carbs, and also anything that, because I've had acid reflux since I was a kid, so anything that put pressure on my digestive tract because of my GI issues, that seemed to tax my body the same way as not getting enough sleep. So if I was eating too much bread, or if I was eating something, I love spicy food, but there's a limit for me. Like, I have no spice tolerance, but I know there's a limit where if I go too much on it, it's going to put me at a predisposition for a panic attack. And those were things I learned because, one of the things when I first experienced these, a lot of the advice that came to me was, do all of these mental related activities. And what it came down to me was physical related activities that helped with prevention. And sometimes these things won't work or will have the opposite effect. One piece of advice I was once given was, if you feel anxious, hop on the treadmill or go for a jog and work yourself, do a bit of a workout, and that'll get it out of your system. So I did that, and I had probably one of the worst panic attacks I ever had because of it. I learned that because the way my brain was improperly wired to interpret physical sensation, the increased heart rate, basically the fight or flight that you experience when working out and stuff like that, getting your body going, that compounded my panic feelings. And so I learned that exercise was something I should not do when I'm not feeling good, but I should do it when I'm feeling good, because then it would help me when I wasn't feeling good. Because you need to learn where to place the appropriate activities throughout your day and with how you're feeling, because exercise really is also a good important part of feeling healthy, and improving yourself, feeling mentally well. And so I would take advantage of that. So even though it wouldn't be used to tackle a panic episode, when I felt good, I would say, hey, I'm going to go for a walk because I feel good. I'm not predisposed to a panic because I'm eating right, sleeping right, and I did my preventative stuff. So I'm going to go for a walk now to feel good while feeling good. And that helped, adding the positives together and then adding preventative stuff when you are more sensitive. And that was probably one of the best things that I figured out. And I probably should have journaled all of this. I didn't. I kind of regret not doing that. I'm probably going to start journaling it this year, though, because I want to learn more about that kind of thing and how it works for me. But journaling it really helps, because then, even if you don't know and you can't figure out what's working and not working for you, you have a record. You can do process of elimination. You can take it to therapy and say, here's the things, it's like, I mean, not to be insensitive, but it's almost like calling tech support and figuring out how to get around the stupid questions they ask you. Did you plug it in, or did you unplug it and plug it back in? And you can
did you turn it off and on again?
Yeah, turn it off and on. And what you do is you create this help support desk list for yourself, and then you can hand it anytime you find a resource on how to tackle your problem. You can just say, here is what I did and the results. You don't have to give me the customer service runaround. You can skip your script your boss gave you and get right to the meat of the problem. And that will help take a lot of the time out of figuring out what works for you. Because, a lot of times what happens is people that don't track this thing or try to be aware of it, they end up trying to reinvent the wheel over and over again. So sorry to go on a spiel there, but that's, that was my experience in how to tackle it, before I was able to, talk to doctors and figure out, the medical side of treating things. And that's what I even do to this day to help myself. And, your mileage may vary, but for me, this approach has been what really helped me.
I can't agree more. I've been journaling, and now I don't even have a pen and paper. I actually journal on my phone because I tend to just have my phone with me. And I know that's probably not a great idea because really want to shut down from all tech. But
it works better for some.
Yeah. So I sit there and I've always typed in like what I like initially, like even before, while I was going through therapy, I was like telling myself like I need to focus on the things that what I was doing to myself, not only to other people but to myself. And part of it was I was looking at the aspects of like ego, how I was letting ego control things. Like I saved it on my phone, so I just have it. It's like I was driven by ego. I wanted others to submit to me. I was reactive to people instead of like looking at my best term interests and long-term goals for not only myself but for like the things I'm invested in. I devalued others. I wanted power in my relationships versus value. Let's see. I'm just going through like my list of my list of crap. I had like just this long resentment, but it was always towards my dad, and then I always valid like the most important thing to me was, and this is like the biggest thing, was my resent. Like I was so angry, like I was every day I was just angry, like fuck my dad, like fuck that guy. And now I'm on the flip side of that, and I want just my emotional well-being, and for myself and for the people I care about around me, because I am ultimately in a strong belief that if I put out this positivity and this light and this love that I have, not only for myself and for others, like it'll spread and people start seeing me for this new person I am. And so I always keep like my short 7 deadly sins, as I called them, as a small reminder of like why I don't want to be that again. So it's good to keep that stuff because, like you said, it's your short, your fix. And then I always track like if I start to feel mad or upset, or if I start like what is causing it. And that's when I take a step back and I start to do that cognitive body thing my therapist says, and then I split my mind and I start to pay attention, and the next thing I know it goes away, like instantly goes away, because I start to resonate with myself. So it's getting so much easier. Like every day it's getting so much easier. Like it's pretty great. It feels good. It feels good to like step away from that. So I completely get what you're saying. So I think we went a little bit longer, but that's completely okay. And I think we both talked and hit amazing points. And Steve, aka Water, do you want to tell people where they can find you, your stuff, and what you're doing?
Sure. So it was mentioned earlier, I am the founder, executive director, and president of a nonprofit called The Stage Reborn. We make the arts more accessible through transformative works like MMORPG theater, digital choir, workshops to do things like teach actual acting method through Discord and video games. And you can find all information about us at www.astagereborn.com. We're on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Facebook, all sorts of social media. Just Google A Stage Reborn if you want to learn more about us. We are a 501c3. We are a charity. So take a look for upcoming events. We like doing things like Extra Life, Twitch streams on weekends. So go ahead and check us out. You can also join our Discord at discord.gg/astagereborn. That's the invite code, all one word. And it's a public server, so anybody can come to us, use our server for anything. We got social rooms. We got rooms for gamers, raiders. We've got rooms for artists, cosplayers, creatives. So join us. It's a fun community, supportive community, and we do neat things.
And as always, you can find us at maelstromradio.com. And of course you can find us on Twitter at Maelstrom_radio. And as I said before, you can email show@maelstromradio.com. If you have any if you need to chat, if you need to reach out, if you want to talk to us, let us know. Just send us that message. Our DMs are open. Our email is open to you. These episodes are here just so we can start having this open discussion and remove the stigma from not talking about mental health. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate your time. And for the next episode, I believe is going to be Arcean, who is a gamer in the Final Fantasy XIV and other games. And she, much like me, grew up in Florida, and I believe her story is somewhat close to mine. So that will be the next episode. See you all next time. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Here With Me. Please stay tuned for more episodes in the series.